Now there's an interesting term. It almost sounds like a contradiction because you're talking about business processes, which of course are linear models, and networks in the same breath. How does that happen? Well, the reality is very few things actually work very clean and linear anyway. There are any really effective process, other than very simple processes, has a whole wealth of human interactions that support it. And that's where the network comes in. I cut my teeth back on reengineering back there in the early 1990s, and I very quickly learned the dirty little secret of process engineering, and that is that once things become the least bit complicated, nobody follows the process. And everyone that I was working with saw this as a problem. Oh, we have to get people to all follow the same process. And a little light bulb went on in the back of my head that said, what if it's not a problem? What if it's natural for people to constantly tinker with the process? And in fact, a certain amount of variation in very complicated processes is where your innovation comes from. So if you try to drive out all variation in your process, are you also driving out innovation? So that was when I started to look at any business activity as a value-creating network, saying if we still need to drive towards consistent outcomes, I mean, that's the whole purpose of process engineering, is to get consistent outcomes. But is there a way that we can model the work to still get consistent outcomes that would allow for variation? So whenever I look at a business process, or I like to actually use the term business activity, I always see people interacting with each other. And a business process network is simply the ecosystem of the human interactions that support the process in being effective. The term is only now starting to gain a little bit of traction, but people have been reaching for a network view of process very intensely for about 5 or 6 years now, and you hear this creeping into business language. There's been a real increase in the usage of terms like networks, social networks. Collaborative networks is a very key term now. This is really what people are talking about when they're talking about business process networks. And we really need a way to look at them and understand them as networks and not just as linear production lines.